We all have to eat. You might as well find out where the best food is. From restaurant reviews to the fun of food from around the region to around the world. This is The Food Show with Andrew Coppolino on 570 News.
And good afternoon and welcome to The Food Show. It is Andrew Coppolino and I'm very happy to be alongside here with you on a rather chilly day, I guess we could call it, to say the least. And I hope you're all settled in, nice and warm wherever you are, and giving us an hour of your time for The Food Show here. We like to think of The Food Show as a sort of an important part of the 570 News family. Covers an area of interest that a lot of people are always quite excited about. I mean, who doesn't like food? And with that, I would include you too, I guess. Hey, Craig, over there in the operations studio, you like food, right? Yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us today, too. I'm glad to see you behind the dials there and working the buttons. We have a very interesting lineup today, although not necessarily a really extensive one, but we do have, I'm very privileged to have here with us Anita Stewart. Now, for those of you who don't know Anita Stewart, she is, number one, a culinary activist, and she runs the Food Day Canada, which is a national food day event that runs every year in the summertime. But most importantly, for the moment anyway, is she's just been recognized as just about the highest you can get in the country as an Order of Canada. And that is spectacular, and welcome to the show. And thank you and congratulations.
Awesome. I feel like I've come home.
And you've got your little pin there that signifies that. That is quite, that must make you just sort of burst with pride, I would think, for any Canadian to that.
I am just absolutely thrilled.
Wow.
Absolutely thrilled. I grew up, my mom was a teacher, and she taught new Canadians coming over to Canada after World War II, and my living room was full of different languages and so forth, and one of the extraordinary privileges that I will have as a member of the Order of Canada will be to be able to administer the oath of citizenship after the ceremony, after I'm invested officially.
Wow.
But everything else is in place now except for that one piece. And I'm going to be at as many citizenship ceremonies as I can be.
Yeah,
that's
wonderful.
Think it's great.
Yeah, it is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
But we've had you on the show a couple of times, and you and I have had dealings and bumped into each other in the past. But I suddenly look at you in a much more, in a different light now, because you've got this glow, this Canadian glow around you now. Congratulations, and we hope to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
Right now, though, I want to talk a little bit about a really fantastic event that's happening in downtown Kitchener coming up in the next week or so. At the end of this week, it's the Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year, and there's some great events going on in our city, as there will be across the world, because it's the major calendar event for folks of Chinese origin. And I want to introduce to you now Brianna Scott. She should join me on the line as the communications and event coordinator at the City of Kitchener's Downtown Business Association. Hello, Brianna. Are you there?
Hi, I am. How are you?
I'm doing well. Tell us a little bit about what's happening on January 21st.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yep, January 21st. That's the celebration day, even though the actual date is January 23rd. But what's happening on January 21st and where?
On the 21st, we have celebrations at the Kitchener Market. It's all free. This is the second year we've done it, so we have all-day programming from 9 until 2. And we have cooking classes going on, doing traditional Chinese meals, and just kind of giving a lesson in all the traditions.
Now, you've done this in the past. What kind of crowds can we expect? It must be a pretty popular event. I mean, people love celebrations of any kind, and people love the Chinese culture with some of the great food that they produce. One of the great cuisines of the world, and maybe we'll have Anita talk to us a little about that. But tell us a little bit about how big an event this is and how many people might be expected there.
This is a huge event. Last year we were absolutely packed in there. I mean, the music and the food, the smell of the food, it's definitely a draw for the market. It fits in perfectly with the ethnic backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be really exciting. The food classes were absolutely packed last year. Again, they're free classes, and learning new techniques and all that kind of stuff is always really important. So.
Tell me a little bit about the story of the red envelope. Can you give me some details about what that entails?
Yeah, so traditionally red envelopes were given out as good luck. So they're mostly given to children through their grandparents or their parents, and they were filled with money for the new year. So it represented good luck.
How do people participate in this little event that's going on with the red envelope? Are there stores that are handing the red envelopes out, or how does it work?
We have a number of our businesses participating, our membership participating in it. So what they're doing is they're offering a discount or a special deal for the 2 weeks. And basically, when you're in their store purchasing something, you'll be handed a scratch card that resembles a red envelope. You give it a little scratch, and you'll be given a discount to another member within the downtown.
Tell us a little bit about where the event is, what time it runs again, and if there's a website that people can go to look for more information. Is there a cost involved? All the sort of the W5 details.
Yeah, for sure. So it takes place at the Kitchener Market, which is 300 King Street West. Downtown Kitchener in the East End, the East End, yeah. And you can visit www.kitchenerdowntown.com for more information.
Thanks a lot, Brianna. We have Terry Salmon now on the line, and he's going to be a chef there, so we'll speak to him. But you can stay on the line if you like, Brianna, but if not, if you've got to go somewhere, I appreciate your time, and thanks for calling us.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Chef Terry, how are you?
Bye-bye.
Hey, Ann.
Good to talk
to you.
Andrew.
How are you?
We're doing well here. We've bumped into you a couple of times at various events you do at the market, but you're one of the sous chefs at Langdon Hall, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And now you've got this Lunar New Year cooking responsibility. Tell me what you're going to be doing for the big celebration.
Well, Lunar New Year Chinese traditionally is a big family event. It's something akin to what we would do for, say, Christmas gatherings. You know what we do here in Canada.
Right.
A big family event, big gathering. It's all about big food, big buffets. We're going to be doing some hot and sour soup, some dumplings. I'm going to do a nice big vegetable platter for everyone to sample, some Chinese vegetables from our local New City Market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at these gatherings, they cook all kinds of meats, pork, beef, and traditionally fish. And fish being kept at the end of the night, they would keep some over for the New Year, being showing prosperity, having some leftovers for the New Year. Always something left over for the New Year.
Are you making things like dumplings? Are you making things like, how important are these sort of steamed rice dishes and that kind of traditional cuisine that you'll find at these celebrations in this culture?
Well, rice, of course, is a big staple in Chinese cuisine. It's served with everything. They have it with breakfast. Some people they'd take some rice that was left over from the night before, and they'd ball it up and take it to work and just have a cold sticky rice ball. But we'll be serving some pork dumplings. I got some lovely gyoza sauce that we're going to be doing there, and of course you've heard the pot stickers.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
The story behind them being the foolish chef who left dumplings on the stove and the water boiled away and they stuck to the bottom of the pot and they got all crispy and crunchy on the outside. So that's sort of where that comes from. We'll do a little bit of that and we'll talk a lot about about the food, about the market, especially the marketplace. We're really trying to make the marketplace the culinary epicenter for Kitchener-Waterloo, and hopefully with events like this and everyone gathering and seeing the food and enjoying the music and the celebration, we can start some of that.
As a chef, what is your take on, what is your, what's the word I want, the idea of Chinese cookery? How important is that to you on a world cuisine scale? Like, how often do you sort of to go into those techniques and those methods and those flavors for some of the other cooking you might do?
Well, the big word that's been thrown around a lot is fusion, of course, and I worked in a restaurant in Toronto in 2005 called Susser with Chef Susser Lee.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest place I saw a lot of fusion influence. Of course, his Asian style influenced heavily by French cuisine and the blending of the two. When we cook here at Langdon, the chef here, of course, had traveled extensively and did a lot of work in Japan and things like that. So these elements, they do come through, ginger and scallions and the Chinese 5-spice and Szechuan pepper and all these things. We use them in ways to highlight foods that, maybe aren't so traditionally Chinese.
Terry, thanks a lot, and I look forward to bumping into you down there at the Chinese New Year celebrations and take a little bit of sampling of some of the cuisine you're going to be cooking up. Thanks for joining us here. I appreciate it.
No, great. I can't wait to see you there.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So there we go, Anita. There's some Chinese cookery that's going to be happening in downtown. I think there's all the artistry and the theater, I guess, that's associated with that New Year, where you've got the dragons and the lanterns and all kinds
It'll
of
be
great.
Gorgeous.
It's usually really fun, and we have some pretty amazing culinary creations that come out of this downtown core, especially with our Chinese food, the Vietnamese cooking as well. Just some of my favorite stuff. Now, what I was trying to get at with Terry there was, I've talked to chefs on numerous occasions, and I know you talked way more than me, but they, when I ask them where they go after hours to eat, they invariably, or what they eat when they're not cooking, they invariably say some kind of Oriental
Asian,
Chinese
yep.
food, whether it's Laotian or whether it's Bangkok or whatever.
Often
It
so
seems
fresh. It's so fresh
Yeah,
and immediate,
mhm,
and they know that it's being cooked to order for them.
Yeah.
And it's not out of the back of a truck.
Yeah, and there just seems such a variety of cooking techniques and different flavors
It's
and
interesting
spicings.
too, because one of the things, he was saying about sort of the attitude about fish being left over, so they were saving it till the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I was to a potlatch in northern British Columbia, and it was a 3-day celebration of a man's life, of the investiture of his son as a new chief, and a number of other ceremonies. And the goal was to illustrate abundance. We have so much. We are so rich. We can give it away. And that was the sort of the comment from everyone.
Yeah.
And this wee tiny village, and it was amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it really was amazing.
Great.
So it's an attitude that permeates many food cultures, even including WASP like me. You know, I mean, what would I do without leftover turkey?
Yeah, that leftovers to me are an opportunity to explore. Almost,
I
because
love them.
I think I just made some idiotic combination. I had some bulgur left over in the fridge, and there was a little bit of a chickpea salad, and I thought, well, let's see what those two
Why
things
not?
are like together. Threw them together, added a little bit of acid, vinegar stuff. I put a little more oil in it, some salt and pepper, mixed it all up, shaved some carrots in there, and this was all of a sudden looked like
Really?
two things that never would go together, and then all of a sudden it was a great cold salad.
I
It
read
was-
about that on
Yeah, I must
on
have-
your blog.
I'm always
You
blathering
were-
somewhere about it.
You were tweeting about it.
Yeah, I guess it made an impression on me, didn't it? Well, I'm speaking with Anita Stewart, of course, our frequent guest here on the show. I think you've been in 2 or 3 times
Yep.
here. It's always great to have you in the studio. A wealth of food knowledge, Canadian food knowledge, the culinary activist, historian, writer, and of course, most recently, Order of Canada. And we've got some of her books over on our sideboard.
Well, these
over there.
are
I hope
just
that
some that
Greg
I brought
can
in.
highlight those over
There's
on our
some that I
sideboard.
brought in because they were ones that have been in my cupboard for years, and one, of course, is without a cover completely. I mean, the one that's standing up, and
Yeah.
it's the More with Less cookbook. I mean, it's in reprint now, but that one I'm never going to give away
No, I
because
bet.
mean that was one of my Bibles in the early times of when frugality, if you would. And then, of course, Edna Stabler's Food That Really Schmecks. Again, one of the treasures in Canada. She has an Order of Canada. Or she had, I guess, she had was honored that a number of years before she passed away. I think, though, her claim, she really preferred to be known as a writer as opposed to a food writer. But as far as I'm concerned, she was one of the best, one of the finest, one of the people that broke new ground.
Yeah, and her name here in Waterloo Region is huge as well. We just sort of
Yes.
think of Food That Really Schmecks and Waterloo County Fair and all of that. So she sort
Absolutely.
of defined the culture here as well as helping
It did.
across the country. So, well, we're going to talk more about this. Anita Stewart, of course, is with me now. If you want to see what's going on here in the studio and take a look at some of these books that we're talking about, you just have to go to the 570news.com website and you click on the webcast button and you can sort of see what's happening here in the studio. It's not that like we're juggling chainsaws or breathing fire or doing anything really spectacular, but you can just get an idea of how cozy and warm it is here in the studio. And speaking of cozy and warm, get cozy and warm, but stay with us. We have to take a commercial break. When we come back, more with Anita Stewart. Stay with us, please. This is 570 News.
This is the Food Show with Andrew Coppolino. To call Andrew, 519-570-2545. By cell, star 570. Or toll free, 1-800-570-5715. Back to the Food Show with Andrew Coppolino on 570 News.
And there we are. Welcome back again. The second segment of the Food Show here on 570 News. And my guest, Anita Stewart, Order of Canada. I am Andrew Coppolino. Wow, this is big news, as I think most people in the food world recognize. There's only you and Jamie Kennedy that are,
Yes.
I guess, living recipients,
Yes,
like you mentioned,
yes,
Edna Stabler.
yes.
So what was that like? How, what do you get a phone call
Yes,
from the Governor
that's
General's,
exactly it. Yes.
assistant, or
Yes,
what? How's
you
that?
do.
Do you?
That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. It was about the end of the first week in December, I guess, and I got a phone call from Ottawa.
Let's get that mic a bit closer to you.
The 613 area code, and it was like, oh, what's up there now?
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah.
You never know. And it turned out to be the Rideau Hall calling, and they said, first of all, you've been selected to receive an Order of Canada. We'd like to know if you'd accept it.
Well, we're having people that have declined.
I know. That was the first thing. Of course, I was sort of like, oh, yes.
Flabbergasted, or were you very cool? Were you cool, or were you all...
Oh, no, I wasn't at all cool. Of course, then they asked, secondly, whether I'd like any publicity around it, whether I'd be open to media questions, and of course I would, because I think it's part of my mission to actively promote the growth and study of our distinctly Canadian food culture.
You're a vehicle for that in a way.
Yeah,
aren't you?
exactly. Yeah. So that was it. Then they said, now don't tell.
Oh, I see. So you had to be mum about it.
Then I had to be mum, exactly, until the announcement is made. Of course, I had no idea, and it turned out to be made on December 30th. So it was pretty incredible.
Have you been? Is the investiture happened, or whatever they call it? That is
the
coming up.
investiture will happen at the end of. Well, we're thinking May or June, but it's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, it depends on Their Excellency's schedule.
Well, I think you have to cook for them too, Anita.
That would be okay. I could imagine. But Her Excellency apparently is a baker, and I learned that from Paul Finkelstein, and she's done. Well, I mean, like myself, apparently at one point during their married life here, I'm not sure whether it was in Waterloo or wherever it was that they were. She was selling. No, it wouldn't have been here. It would have been probably in Montreal or some other location.
We're talking, of course, about Mrs. Governor General.
Yes, yes, and Madame Johnson, and she sold things like I sold things to earn money to raise a family, and that their family was large. I had 4 sons, and that was it. I made money by selling grape jelly and wild grape jelly from the hedgerows around Elora, right, to making gingerbread houses. I mean, I laugh because it's they now. People think it's pretty amazing to make a gingerbread house. It's really easy.
Yeah. I've tried that. It's not so easy.
Oh, it is. So I could teach you. I could teach you all.
Looks like it was in through an earthquake or something.
No, well, because you don't know how to stick it together.
Yeah, that's
I have the
secret. There's very few things I don't do. Okay, there's very few things I know how to stick together. I would just point out the Order of Canada is a fellowship that was established in 1967. It recognizes the achievement of outstanding merit or distinguished service by Canadians who have made a major difference to Canada through lifelong contributions in every field of endeavor, as well as those efforts made by non-Canadians who have made the world a better place to be in by their actions. And actually, there's a Latin phrase, I'll try to butcher it here, desiderante meliorem patriam, meaning they desire a better country.
Yes,
and so essentially,
that's right.
The work that you do.
Yes.
Oh, you recognize my poor Latin, did you?
No, I think your translation was fine.
The work you do has been to put Canadian cuisine, I guess, in its place at the forefront of the way we live our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Actively and loudly, and celebrate, in a way of celebration. And that was what Food Day Canada is all about. But also too, day to day, from coast to coast to coast. And we've got some of the most interesting ingredients on the planet. Some of the best chefs. I mean, you spoke with Terry Salmon from Langdon Hall. I mean, these people are extraordinary. They can stand on a podium with anybody on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, and yet it doesn't get that kind of, there's not that kind of awareness to the same, or it's in a very small niche of our dining culture, I guess. It's growing. But
part of it's because there are very few programs such as yours. And there are very few really serious culinary publications or food publications. We have Food and Drink, which is great. Tends to be very international in its focus, mainly because of the advertising. But in terms of a real honest-to-goodness Canadian food publication, the last one that I remember that was national was the PC magazine, and before that it was Canadian Living Food.
Yeah.
So that's serious.
Yeah,
that's a serious issue.
And unfortunately, that's as much a reflection on the sort of the general, shall we say, evolution and changes in the publishing industry.
Yes.
I mean, the LCBO magazine, it makes huge money. They have a massive amount of revenue.
It's a great recipe, and there's some fabulous food writers, but it doesn't have a heck of a lot of focus on the ingredients of here and now.
Sure. And it's only Ontario, right?
Yes, it's only Ontario.
So we'd like to see a national one.
Oh yeah, they should. But I don't think it won't happen.
Can you talk to the Governor General when you see him?
I intend to.
Because he has a little bit of pull in this region,
He has a wonderful pull in this region. He's deeply respected by anybody that I've ever known that's met him.
And of course, we know how much that he's done for putting the helping put the University of Waterloo on the map from the sort of that end of things. But maybe we need to pull back from the sort of our what do you call it, tremendous focus on high tech and get some low tech stuff in here. Like let's get some
actually a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I agree. My alma mater is Waterloo Lutheran University.
The same letters, but a different name.
I know that's how old I am.
Yeah.
So
you went to the Lutheran University, which is now Laurier.
Yeah. I did an undergraduate there, and it was fun. It kept me out of the cold, but that was about it. I learned how to research, and that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That absolutely was the most important piece that I took away from that. And then many years later, I did the graduate degree in Adelaide, South Australia, in gastronomy, and then recently honored with a Doctor of Laws from the University of Guelph. So that was in June.
You're situated sort of at the University of Guelph.
I do a lot of work with them off and on because they are Canada's food university. Arguably, they are. And so there's tremendous potential at U of G.
So between those two, Wellington County and Waterloo Region, this really should be a hub for food culture. But the Guelph obviously has the food science part of it as well, and then the archival materials that are there.
Yeah, they have the largest Canadian cookbook collection on the planet.
Yeah, thanks to you partially.
But partially, yes. Jo Marie Powers, who I co-authored my first book with, she was really the spearhead, if you would. Yeah. She really got that one rolling.
Okay, well here's what we're doing then. As I'm sort of I'm tasking you with the job then of talking to the Governor General, get him to come here in the studio with you. We'll get him behind the mic, and we'll say, okay, how can we make this the starting of the food culture and the national magazine and all that stuff moving out across the country?
Well, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would be really that would be wonderful. No, I would like to speak with her as well.
Okay.
The award in celebration of the nation's table, of course, is the Governor General's Award in celebration of the nation's table, and that occurred about a year and a half ago. I have to walk backwards in my mind, and it's it will happen again. Mm-hmm. We don't know the timing yet. Mm-hmm. There's a committee that's been struck. They haven't been able to meet because again the Governor General they're travel so much to actually become acquainted with the country. Not that he doesn't know it already, but to actually make an official appearance. But once things settle down a little bit, I expect that will go forward too. And I think that that's really important because, as you and I both know, food is the essence of every culture. And Canadian cuisine has been built and Canadian culture has been built by people for years and years and years who have done amazing things in food, and we don't know one another.
Right. Yeah.
So the Nation's Table Awards is a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And this is so funny when you think about the size of Canada physically, geographically, coast to coast, et cetera, and then you think about our relatively small population.
Oh yeah, that's part of it.
We have this sort of these very contradictory pulls that try to bind us together, and it takes a lot of effort to sort of overcome the small size of people and the large size of the country. It's unique qualities, I guess, compared to other countries.
And I look at again, you say the size, a nation with a huge amount of geography and not a heck of a lot of history. But we have created the second nation on the planet peacefully within the last 500 years. And I think that we don't have to beat ourselves up too much. The current incarnation of fast food, if you would, is, I think, I'm hoping it's a bit of a blip. Mm-hmm. But, within living memory, certainly within my memory, and I'm not that old, we were cooking locally. We were cooking seasonally. We were cooking regionally. So, and when I look at chefs like Jonathan Gouchou and the people at Nick at Nuts and Envers and Borealis and all of the people that you know from your work here, they are doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're supporting an extraordinary food culture. And as diners go to those restaurants and say, well, I'd love to have some Cumbrae beef, or I'd love to have some Wagyu Farm hamburger, or go to the farmers markets, which really have never stopped being in existence here, where they have in other regions of North America, we are really blessed.
Well, we have to take a short break. We're going to come back and hold all those thoughts, Anita, because we do have to get a couple of commercials done here to pay the bills. And let's talk a little bit more about cookbooks in specific. Now, if you have anything you want to ask Anita Stewart, Order of Canada, or if you have a question, please call 519-570-2545. That's 519-570-2545 or star 570 on your cell. Talk to Anita Stewart. This is Andrew Coppolino. This is The Food Show. We'll be right back. Sit tight.
We all have to eat. You might as well find out where the best food is. From restaurant reviews to the fun of food from around the region to around the world. This is The Food Show with Andrew Coppolino on 570 News.
Hey, welcome back. It's The Food Show. It's the third segment. Time rolls when you're having fun here at The Food Show. We're glad you've joined us, and stick with us because we've got lots more coming up. Anita Stewart is my guest, Order of Canada, culinary activist, historian, food writer, cookbook writer, Food Day Canada maven. Anything to do with food in Canada, you can guarantee that she probably knows about it. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about cookbooks because it's been my theory, as feeble as it might be, that the culture is contained in the conglomeration or agglomeration of cookbooks that are across our culture. And I thought it would be interesting to add a third voice to this, and someone who certainly knows cookbooks way better than I do, and that is Alison Fryer of the Cookbook Store in Toronto. Alison, are you on the line?
I certainly am.
Hi, Alison.
Hi, Anita.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping you can spend a little bit of time with us as we talk about cookbooks, because you certainly are right. Well, I guess sitting amongst them when you do your day-to-day job.
They're all around me on the dining room table.
Are they? Okay. Well, the first thing let's talk about, Anita, is the nature of the cookbook in Canada. Is there a way to generalize any particular common threads going through them?
Well, I mean, I look at the regional cookbooks, first of all, like Edna Stabler's. We were talking about food that really schmecks, Alison, a little bit earlier.
Yes,
and
I did hear that.
Yeah, and that was from my perspective as a young mom, the first really uber regional food book that I came across, and it was like, wow, this happens. Then, of course, I discovered Marie Nightingale. And so ever since then, we've been watching and growing, and the cookbooks themselves have been evolving really beautifully as well.
Well, and I think another classic one in that group would be Elizabeth Baird's Classic Canadian Cooking, which was first published in 1978, and mid-late 70s, and was definitely focused on regional cooking to the point where, if you look back, you could almost say that was one of the very first sort of to crisscross Canada with regional cooking.
Yeah, it was, and of course,
and it's still in print.
And it sprang out of the Canadian Living family. When did Canadian Living?
Well, no, Canadian Living didn't start until the mid-'80s.
Was it 80s? Okay.
Elizabeth at that point wasn't
she
associated
predated
with
it.
Canadian Living, so
okay, that's
she
interesting.
did that all on her own. So, and again, out of her first book, then sprung two others that she did called Summer Berries and Apples, Peaches, and Pears, which are still around and still very significant for the regionality too. But availability is fine now too, of all the ingredients.
Yes, absolutely. That's the other thing. It sort of pushes people to use those ingredients and encourages them.
Well, I like to think these cookbooks in general, I mean, internationally they publish, and sit down for this one, over 20,000 cookbooks a year.
Wow.
Wow.
And Canada is growing in their cookbook publishing by leaps and bounds, certainly the last 15 years, which we're, truly grateful. And the quality is being, upgraded dramatically.
Yes.
But they are living histories, is what I was going to say. They are, just because a recipe was done 20 years ago, they're not time sensitive. If it was good then, it's good now, and you can tweak it over the years. But meatloaf can have variations of changes as immigration has increased in Canada too. That's what you see, and it's all good.
Oh, I think so.
They do hold an amazing amount of history, because when I think about it, and I this is maybe not pertinent completely with cookbooks, but if you think about looking at an old cookbook, and I've had books that have been passed down, or I see books that I get in used bookstores, and the marginalia where someone's written an instruction, to me that kind of marginalia is
That's
part
my
of
favorite part.
yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why ebooks aren't quite the same.
Yeah.
No, it's.
No, and it is true. I mean, it's a shared eating and cooking with recipes is a shared experience between the writer and the cook, and then the cook and the eater. I mean, it's one of those things that transcends just a one-way sort of relationship. I mean, it does go on and on. indefinitely, and favorite recipes can be passed down generations.
How do we, just to pick up on something that you spoke of earlier, both you and Anita, and I asked earlier about the idea of the size of this country. If I think of a place like France where there are distinctive regions, Champagne, Limoges, Gascony, those are regions of that country. What are you talking about when you talk about regional cooking in Canada? Because I think of it provincially, or the West, or the East. Central.
You could correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Anita, but I think more of ingredients when I think of regionality. A lot of times, as opposed to technique, which you might see more of in France or Italy, where it's
perhaps
rich tradition.
I look at out of Nova Scotia, old Nova Scotia kitchens, though, and that is ultimately regional in technique, not necessarily. Yes, absolutely ingredients, but to the history of the German settlers who came and some of the remnants of the Acadian, and that's how Marie Nightingale organized it. And certainly the food culture of Waterloo County is exemplified by Edna's works, and I think that's so. It's a little bit of both,
and which is presently. Wouldn't you say though too? There's a definite interest in what one would call boreal cooking, whereas this whole northern climate cooking and realizing, and that is very, very, for lack of a better term, trendy with young chefs these days too. Saying if they're going to cook locally, how do you do that in the weather that we have? And you look out the window now with the snow on the ground. How do you do that?
Well, you have to plan for it in the summertime, as our ancestors used to do. That was and forage, of course, and
be able to do a variety of techniques and taste with snow.
Yeah, with snow,
snow and ice.
The snowflake, the evolution of the snowflake. Something. One of the things that has evolved very dramatically is the necessity for food writers who are creating, or food authors who are writing books, to test the recipes. And I know that in the early days, going across Canada, I look at the community cookbooks, and many of them, they were tried and true, but they weren't tested particularly well, and certainly they weren't written very well either, because they, out of order, some ingredients are left out, methods were left out, and I was just assuming that you knew what to do.
Do you think that's more a reflection on how, people back then cooked as a necessity? Today they're cooking for a multitude of different reasons.
Yes, that could
be. And the way that recipes are written now have to include a lot more detail, because aren't necessarily growing up standing next to their mother or their grandmother learning all these skills verbally and visually rather than written.
That's a really good point.
Let me just interrupt for a moment. I just want to do a little reset here. Anita Stewart's in the studio with me. She's a culinary activist, historian, and a food writer, maven of Food Day Canada, as well as Alison Fryer. She's with the Cookbook Store in Toronto, which is Yonge Street at about
Yorkville.
Is it Yorkville? Yorkville. Yeah. Okay. Let me just ask you now, the difference for both of you, the difference between what is a food book and what is a cookbook. I've got a lot of books that I look at that I won't cook from. I'm thinking of Suser Lee's cookbook, which is an amazing book to read through, but I don't think I'm going to be able to cook anything in that. The El Bulli cookbook, A Day in the Life of the Restaurant, has got lots of recipes, but I'm not going to be doing much with foams and stuff. So how do you, where's the role of the cookbook? Where's the role of the food book? Are they the same thing? Is one a bad cookbook?
I'll let Alison respond. I have ideas, but you go ahead.
I think we always used to jokingly say that if we depended at the store on people to actually use their cookbooks, we'd have been out of business in 1984. Keep in mind we opened in 1983.
Right. Yeah. Very voyeuristic, that's for sure.
We're celebrating 29 years coming up this spring. But I do think there is a real dichotomy between that, because one of our best-selling books this past year has been a 6-volume set of books called Modernist Cuisine, which goes for $600.
Right.
But when at the end of the year we ran our bestseller list, the one that came out on top was this wonderful little fundraising book the Toronto Star did called A Shortbread Sampler, Mary McGrath's book.
So here you have, isn't that interesting?
And honestly, I was very surprised at that, because I don't pay attention to a lot of the numbers, either we sell or we don't. But when you actually run them over a year, it was very interesting. So I think we're at a real, we have very educated eaters these days.
Yes, well-traveled. Yes.
They've eaten out with their parents in great restaurants, whether they be high-end or local dining. And now these kids have grown up. They're now settling into their own family lifestyle, married with kids, whatever. And they're cooking now. I am pleased to say I think they are cooking more. So therefore they're interested in food. So food books for them are the Michael Pollans they've grown up with, Terence Gresco, who writes Bottom Feeder. But at the same time, they're also interested in the whys and the wherefores, what goes on in the kitchen, too.
Yeah, and the really good recipes.
Mm-hmm. And the recipes are much better written these days, and they were much better tested. I mean, that's one of the first things we do ask. I mean, one of the first things we look at in a cookbook is the index. We don't even look at the recipes.
Yes.
The index is actually well done.
Yeah, that's important. There's no doubt. Yeah. Okay, well, look, Alison, it was really great to speak with you, and you're welcome to stay on the line. I don't want to keep you all day here, but if you want to stay on the line, you're welcome to stay on the line. We do have to take a quick break. Sure. When we come back, we'll have more with Anita Stewart to talk a little bit more about cookbooks, and maybe we'll try to get from Anita what some of her favorites are. Does that seem fair?
Sure.
Or do you not
Alison, don't leave, though.
I won't leave.
Okay, thank you.
Anita Stewart and Alison Fryer, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. This is 570 News.
This is the Food Show with Andrew Coppolino. To call Andrew, 519-570-2545. By cell, star 570. Or toll free, 1-800-570-5715. Andrew Coppolino on 570 News.
And here we go, the last segment of the Food Show. Glad you could join us. We're here with Alison Fryer from the Cookbook Store, and in studio, Anita Stewart, Order of Canada, and a culinary activist and writer. Anita, this is a tough question I'm going to ask you, but what would be your favorite? Do you have a favorite cookbook? Is that possible even to say?
No, it's
What's
not.
One of your favorites?
One of my favorites? Well, I have to go back to good old Kate Aiken. Alison, what do you think about Kate Aiken? I laugh.
I thought that's interesting because I still use it for the butter tarts and the pancake recipe.
Absolutely, you know, I mean that was and Kate did an amazing job in the early days, and her recipes all worked.
Post Second World War.
Yes, I guess I don't know when the first one.
I think it's about 1954, if I'm not mistaken.
I've got the reprint, which is really really good. She was born in 1891 and she passed away in 1971. But, you know, her recipes were all really excellent. And so that would be one of them for sure. And so then, of course, Edna's work. But then you go out and you talk in the field, as I've done over the years, to people who I admire, who are cooking great things or baking great things, and collect my own sort of set of recipes, and you know, from the, as you say, butter tarts right through to oatmeal cookies to scones and everything else. Sometimes you have to stand beside people to make them or to watch them make their own versions, and it's great fun. It's great fun because you visit all the time.
You've written 3 cookbooks, if I'm correct.
Who, me?
More?
Oh, no, you've underestimated that.
How many? Well, I'm just looking at the 3 you've got here. How many have you written?
14.
14. Oh, my gosh. Okay, why did I say 3? Well, what does it take, then, to write 14 cookbooks? Like, besides sort of, what, dedication, perseverance, craziness?
Well, an idea. You know, like I remember going out west to do an article for Canadian Living on the lighthouses of British Columbia, because I had pitched this story to, I guess it was Elizabeth, or no, it wasn't Elizabeth, it was Carol Ferguson at the time, about lighthouse cooking being on the edge. They're really remote places, and they you know, they get their food every
Literally
5 or 6 weeks. Yes, every 5 or 6 weeks they have their food stores delivered.
Wow, yeah, okay.
So I mean, they had to go back to the very, very basics. They had no freezer space for 25 loaves of bread. They had to make their own. It turned into a little book. You know, that's the sort of, there were just too many recipes. I couldn't do a beauty contest or you know, it's like giving away children. And some of the stories were amazing because it was the most Canadianizing experience that I've ever had. It's still in print actually too, which is really pretty interesting.
So it takes ingenuity, perseverance.
Yeah, you have to be always curious.
Bullheadedness,
absolutely stubborn. Because, you know, I mean, I think Alison will understand too. When I first started to write, people didn't know where to file my books, under travel or food, and certainly not under Canadian, really. Because I mean, it was just there hardly was a category in the 80s.
And it's still tough. I mean, cookbooks are always sort of the elephant in the room in that they're very, are they self-help? Are they nonfiction? I mean, and it's, you know, when it comes to award season, you know, you've got your poetry awards, your even playwrights and fiction, nonfiction, literary nonfiction, children's, and yet cookbooks sort of languish. But, you know, they've just rebranded the Cuisine Canada Cookbook Award to Taste Canada, which I think is very exciting.
I think that's great.
I think it's going to be dynamite. And, you know, today's technology, which is just incredible, it allows us to produce the most fabulous cookbooks and books in general, but cookbooks in particular, because the imagery and the photography, the design elements, you couldn't do these 5-10 years ago.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I brought the Farmer's Market cookbook that Joe Marie and I did. Yep. along for Andrew to see. The line drawings in there. There's only one color picture. That's a stock photograph on the cover. My mother did the line drawings, and then that was the same sort of scenario right for the first next 10 cookbooks. Or basically, it wasn't until 1999 that I had a full color hardcover cookbook to my name, and now the last book, the Canada book, the Anita Stewart's Canada, which HarperCollins put out, I sent the manuscript to them over by email, and many of the images also went in by email. The only studio shots were about I think it was 13 large pages that a photographer, Robert Wigington in Toronto, did. Otherwise, everything else was electronically sent back and forth, including the editing, which was tremendous.
I think, as we alluded to earlier, I mean, cookbooks will not go away. I mean, they are probably the last genre that will still be in this sort of format
in print.
Of some work.
Yes, I agree.
And I think the apps that are for your smartphones these days are a definite enhancement, but not a replacement to cookbooks. And if they were a replacement, then you get people like Jamie Oliver, Martha Stewart, who are still producing hard copy cookbooks every year, as well as having fantastic apps for your smartphones and your iPads.
Yeah, so you can actually take that into the kitchen if you're using a particular recipe, or read it somewhere sitting in a on a cruise ship somewhere. Hopefully, not upside down in the
cookbooks
in the
have that
Mediterranean,
practical kind of application.
Yeah, they do.
They only have, and other books don't have that. Yeah, you read it at a beach or whatever, but there's not a lot you take away with you physically, is there?
The Canada book that I brought in, the one that I wrote, on the outside is my working copy, because as I go through and I cook out of this book, which I do a lot, because I happen to like it. I'm biased, but I've made all sorts of notes on the side. I use this kind of pepper for a pepper jelly one year, and another kind for another year. I've increased something and decreased something else.
But I think, Anita, don't kid yourself. In the next generation, you'll be able to take a stylus and do that right onto your iPad, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true too.
But I think in our lifetime, though, and definitely for a long time to come, cookbooks are still very relevant. They're very tactile. They're very visual. They combine a lot of the senses that you don't get when you sit down and just read a fiction book, a novel or something. So, I mean, and heaven forbid if you splatter your iPad in the kitchen or your tablet. I mean, you're in big trouble. It's easy to just, have a sticky page. And there's no bigger compliment to a cookbook author than having a splattered, beaten up copy of a cookbook.
Like the ones the one that I brought in my More with Less cookbook.
It doesn't even have a cover.
There are no covers.
There you go.
It's gone. It's absolutely gone. What about images on electronic books, Alison? What's happening with that?
Images are difficult. Images, from a consumer's perspective, they're beautiful. But if you want to download these, you better make sure you've got a lot of bandwidth.
That's what I was wondering, because I know that that's one of the downsides of self-publishing a food book. Online. I don't see that it works at all, because to me, the sensuality of an image makes you want to bake it.
Gastro-porn, as we like to say.
Yeah, that's right.
It is, absolutely.
But that will change. I mean, as technology is just changing so dramatically. We used to laugh and say our 5-year plan now is our 3-year plan, and our 3-year plan has now become a year, and the year plan is now every month. So.
Yep, that's
Alison,
right.
I have to stop you because we've got to get out of this, but I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join me. Very interesting to speak with you.
Nice to talk to you, Alison.
And congratulations, Anita.
Thank you.
Alison Fryer runs the cookbook store on Yonge Street in Yorkville. We thank her for joining us. I also want to thank my very special guest, Anita Stewart, for joining us. The Order of Canada. What's ahead? Quickly, just a couple seconds. What are you doing next?
More Food Day Canada. More Food Day Canada. I'm doing another website. Watch it, and I'll be in to talk about it. It's going to be amazing. We'll
be sure to have you here. I want to thank also Terry Salmond of Langdon Hall and Brianna Scott of Kitchener downtown. Thanks also to our studio operator here at 570, our cameraman, internet producer Greg Bowen, and studio operator Craig Ainsworth. Visit 570 News for an archive of past shows, .com for an archive of past shows, and follow the Food Show at twitter.com 570 Food Show, and read my column in the Kitchener Post each Friday. Join us next week for registered dietitian Jane Dummer and Odd Bits author Jennifer McClagan. You can win a book. Remember, eat wisely and eat well. Thank you for joining us here at the Food Show, only on 570 News.